Hello, students. Welcome back to Mr. Armstrong Teaches. I'm Mr. Armstrong, and today I'll be teaching adverbs. Part 1. Adverbs are commonly thought of words that modify or describe verbs. Some of them do that. We'll see some examples of not that also. So let's just get started. Notes! Okay, here's some notes. You can pause and write them down and then listen. That's probably what I recommend. That way you will absorb all of the information. And I'm also going to explain these notes to you now. Number 1, adverbs do in fact modify verbs. You see the word verbs in the word adverbs. So that's a pretty good clue that they are connected in some way. But also, asterisks, they can modify adjectives and other adverbs. This is going to be the subject of a future video, but I wanted you to be aware of this concept now. Adverbs do describe verbs, but they can also answer some other questions. How is the describing part? How the verb was done. But adverbs can also answer the questions of when the verb was done, where the verb was done, and to what extent. Now you see the asterisk by to what extent also. This is also the subject of a future video, and these are the adverbs that do modify adjectives and other adverbs. But like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later on. Do you have all these notes down? Because it's time to get a little more specific about how, when, and where, with a few more notes and some examples. Pause if you need to, because we're moving on. We're going to start with how adverbs. And these are the ones that people are probably most familiar with. These are the ones that are usually considered describing a verb. These usually end in ly, but not always. There's a few exceptions. It wouldn't be English if there weren't exceptions to the rules. We'll see those in a little bit. And once again, of course, these tell how the verb was done. Let's look at some examples. There's a bunch for this one, but you should still write them down. Pause if you need to. Quickly, slowly, carefully, clumsily, fast, hard. These are all adverbs that modify and tell how the verb was done. And they are the ones that are considered descriptive in nature. He ran. How did he run? Quickly. Or he ran slowly. He ran carefully. He ran clumsily. These adverbs give us a little bit more information about how that verb was completed. Now, I also included two of the most common examples of how adverbs that do not end in ly, fast and hard. These are also adjectives, but when they become adverbs, they stay the same. So those are some tricky ones to look out for. There's also a warning down below that just because a word ends in ly doesn't mean it's always an adverb. There are some adjectives that end in ly, like friendly, the friendly giant, or lovely, the lovely Valentine. So when you're looking at sentences, you just have to kind of decide, what is this word modifying? Is it modifying a verb and telling me how that verb was done, or is it modifying some object, some noun, and therefore it's an adjective? Okay, did you get those notes? Because we're moving on. Next up are the when adverbs. These ones also modify verbs, but they tell when the verb took place. Sometimes these will still end with ly, but often not. And sometimes these adverbs might seem a little bit like nouns and could sometimes actually behave as nouns depending on how they're used. So they can be a little tricky, but usually they're pretty close to verbs and they're telling us when that verb took place. This one will probably be a little clearer once we look at some examples. Did you get these notes down? Because it's time for examples. These are all examples of when adverbs. Recently, late, tomorrow, daily. They recently moved, right? It answers the question when they did that verb, when they moved. It's not a specific when, right? It's kind of a vague and general when, but it still answers the question of when. They arrived late. Late, once again, tells us when they arrived. Once again, it's not specific, but it answers the question of when, and it's modifying that verb arrived. Tomorrow seems like it might be a noun, but it often behaves as an adverb, telling us once again when the verb took place, or when the verb will take place in this instance. We are leaving tomorrow. When are you leaving? Tomorrow. It answers the question when, and it's modifying the main verb leaving. And then the last one, daily. Bob bathes daily. Thank you, Bob. We appreciate it. But once again, of course, daily tells when Bob bathes. Every day. Got it? And now, let's move on to the last category for today, adverbs that answer the question, where. Where adverbs modify verbs, and of course tell where the verb happens. These do not end with ly. These also might sometimes seem like nouns, and also, if you'll remember correctly from an earlier lesson about prepositions and adverbs, these words are the ones that are sometimes on the preposition list. Sometimes these words behave as prepositions at the start of a prepositional phrase. Sometimes they're adverbs. It just depends on what comes after the words. Pause if you need to get all these notes, because now we're going to look at some examples. So these examples tell where a verb takes place. Just like with the when adverbs, it's not super specific, but it still does vaguely answer the question of where. There, outside, downtown, home, by. Let's look at these in sentences. We went there. We don't know where there is in this example, but there is a word that's telling us where the verb happened, where we went. Outside. Outside is on the prepositions list. It is often a preposition. If it's followed by a noun, like outside the barn, then it is not an adverb. It is the start of a prepositional phrase. It is a preposition. But in the example, the dog runs outside, there's no noun after the word outside that the word outside is pointing to, and so outside is behaving as an adverb, telling us where the dog runs, telling us where that verb takes place. Downtown is one that seems like a noun, and it can be used as a noun, but it's often used as an adverb, telling us where the verb took place. Nadia drove downtown. Home works the same way. We often use it as an adverb in English. Grandpa stayed home. Home is an adverb modifying the verb stayed. And then finally, by. This is another word that's on the prepositions list, but in this example, the bird flew by. It's behaving as an adverb, telling us where, very vaguely, the bird flew. Got it? I hope so, because that's the end of Adverbs Part 1. I hope you got all of those notes down. Remember, you can watch this video over and over and over again if you wish to go back and get those notes. They will be very useful to you for your studies. If you have any questions, you can post them in the comments below or ask me in class. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to teaching you again very soon. Bye-bye.